What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'll be talking about Stewart Haas Racing and whether or not they will stay with Ford in 2025, or will they switch manufacturers. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Over the course of the last few months, there's been a lot of chatter surrounding Stewart Haas Racing and whether or not they are going to stay with Ford in 2025. A big reason why Stewart Haas Racing is potentially may switch manufacturers is because right now, their contract with Ford expires at the end of this year in 2024. And it was also just announced very, very recently back on Thursday that Farmer Motorsports has announced their extension with Ford. And apparently, according to Eric Estep in his video, I think on Thursday or Friday, apparently Mark Rushberg was asked about it and he said no comment on Stewart Haas Racing, whether or not they are going to stay with Ford. Another little interesting thing, last year was a lot of talk about 2311 Racing also potentially switching over to Ford as well, and they came very close to switching, but obviously Denny Hamlin decided to stay with Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing, and there was a lot of talk that Stewart Haas Racing was potentially going to lose some of their charters. So today we're going to go through all four of the potential manufacturers. There's also talk that Honda could be coming into play as well, and whether or not they're going to stay there or not. First, let's begin by talking about Ford. Now, currently at the moment, there are four key partner Ford organizations. You obviously have Stewart Haas Racing. You've, of course, got the 4 car by Josh Berry. You've got the number 14 for Chase Briscoe, the 41 for Ryan Preece, and the 10 car for Noah Gragson. You've also got Team Penske, who's won the last 2 NASCAR championships. You've, of course, got Logano, Blaney, and then Austin Cindric. You've got RFK Racing, who had a breakout season in 2023. Chris Buescher got 3 wins with a great year with the RFK banner, and Brad Keselowski had a very consistent year in the 6 car, and they're expanding to the 60 car for drivers like potentially Cam Waters, David Reagan is going to be running the Daytona 500 tomorrow, and of course even other drivers from the Ford camp like Riley Herbst, Cole Custer, and Haley Deegan. You think about the performance as well. I just talked about all the organizations in the Ford camp. Look, let's be real and honest. I also mentioned Farmer Motorsports, of course, with Michael McDowell, Todd Gillen, and then the 36 car. But going back to the performance of Stewart Haas Racing, they have struggled in the last couple of years with Ford. They haven't been good since 2020. In 2021, they only won 1 race with Eric Almirola, and then they basically failed and fell off in a major way over the course of the last couple of years. They kind of had a resurging year in 2022 where a couple of drivers were able to win. Kevin Harvick got 2 victories, and Chase Briscoe got a win and made it to the round of 8. But outside of that, it was a struggling year. And last year in 2023, the whole organization failed to score a win and the victory, and Kevin Harvick did not win a race and was unfortunately got eliminated in the round of 16 in his final year. And then you think about the sponsorship issues that plague Stewart Haas Racing. They just lost Busch Beer when Kevin Harvick left. They lost Gold Bowling. They lost Smithfield because Eric Almirola is no longer at the organization. And they've been replaced by drivers like Josh Berry, bringing a little bit of sponsorship from Harrison's, and Noah Gragson, who is bringing a little bit of sponsorship from Black Rifle Coffee and Winchester and Ranger Boats, and even Bass Pro has been rumored to be coming back into play. But they have lost a ton of major sponsors in backing from Ford in recent years, in recent seasons. And I think that could be a major key thing that could potentially lead to them selling charters, which we'll get into a little bit. I don't think that they're the number one Ford organization. I think Ford is really not happy with the lack of performance from Stewart Haas Racing. Again, I talk about Penske. They just won the last 2 championships in 22 and 23. RFK had a resurging season last year and won 3 races, and both of their cars made it at least to the round of 12. And Chris Buescher nearly made it to the round of 8, ran championship 4 last year. And then you think about Front Row Motorsports, who just also announced that they're a key partner team. They won at the Indy Road Course last year, and they're starting on the front row for the Daytona 500 tomorrow. So I think that Ford doesn't know if they're going to have 4 key partner teams. And like I just mentioned earlier in this episode, Mark Rushberg said no comment on if they're going to remain with Ford. I think it's 50-50 right now that they do remain with Ford. I think it's 50% they stay with Ford, but they may not be a key partner organization if they do end up staying with Ford past this year. Let's move on to the second manufacturer, and that is Chevrolet. Now, Stewart Haas Racing was with Chevrolet from 2009 through the 2016 season. And during that time with Chevrolet, they had a lot of success. They won the championship with Tony Stewart in 2011, and they also won the championship with Kevin Harvick in 2014. But obviously, they went to Ford in 2017. Now, there's a conversation surrounding them going back to Chevrolet because Tony Stewart's had a massive affiliation with Chevy for many, many years. I've also seen people talking about Junior Motorsports coming into play with this as well. Don't know if this rumor is very likely. I've seen people mention in my comments in the past that Dale Jr. is somehow going to buy his way into Stewart Haas Racing, which, let's be for real and honest, I don't really see that happening, where basically Junior Motorsports just buy their way into Stewart Haas Racing. It could happen. That could certainly be an option and possibility there. But another thing to watch for is, would Stewart Haas Racing become a key partner Chevy team? Right now, there are three major key partner Chevy teams. You've got Hendrick Motorsports, the 4 cars driven by Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, and then, of course, William Byron, who just had a breakout year last year, had a career season. You've also had Trackhouse Racing with the 99 car for Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain. And then, of course, you do have to talk about RCR with Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, which Kyle Busch almost came very close to joining Stewart Haas Racing a few years ago. And then you've got some of the smaller organizations like Spire Motorsports and JTG Doherty, and also Colleague Racing, we'll also talk about a little bit later in this episode. But I think about this, with Stewart Haas Racing, if they switch back to Chevy, would they become a key partner team? That could be a possibility. I could see Stewart Haas Racing being really high up on the pecking order in signing an alliance with Hendrick Motorsports. Because when Tony Stewart went over to Haas, and brought Stewart Haas Racing to light, we saw them basically get major key backing from Hendrick Motorsports. Obviously, they lost the key backing when they left Chevy to go to Ford, but I could definitely see Stewart Haas Racing working really, really closely with them. But again, it's going to be really tough for them to switch over there, considering the fact that Chevrolet is really tight right now, and they've got a lot of teams right now currently at the moment. I know they just lost Legacy Motor Club over to Toyota, but still, with Stewart Haas Racing become a massive key partner team, that could be possible, because also Noah Gragson and Josh Berry were Chevy drivers for most of their careers. So I could definitely see the possibility of Stewart Haas Racing switching back to Chevy, but would they have that same performance they had with Ford when they went back to Ford? That can certainly be a possibility and an option as well. The third manufacturer I'm talking about is Toyota. Now, Toyota I see as the least likelihood as a possibility, and here is why. Toyota has 3 key partner teams. 3 really tight-knit key partner teams going into this year. You've obviously got 2311 Racing. They're going to have 3 cars at some point this year. Bubba Walsh driving a 23 car, Tyler Reddick driving a 45 car again, and obviously the 6-7 car, they'll have drivers potentially like Corey Himes, Sheldon Creed, Chandler Smith, Eric Almirola, and even potentially Carl Edwards coming out of retirement at some point as well as a possibility. You've got Legacy Motor Club, who've obviously got John Hunter Nemechek driving a 42. You've got Eric Jones driving a 43, and then of course you have the 84 car that will have Jimmy Johnson and potentially Corey Heim throughout the year as well. Maybe even Eric Almirola, since Smithfield seems like they're in play with them as well. And then you have Joe Gibbs Racing with their driver lineup, Denny Hamlin the 11, Martin Truex Jr. the 19, 20 car driven by Christopher Bell, and then of course the number 54 car driven by Ty Gibbs. I think Toyota is very unlikely to be a manufacturer that they could pick up, because there's 3 tight teams, and I think Toyota doesn't have really any room at the mill currently at the moment. So I don't really see Toyota as a massive possibility, considering they're in an equal position, and I think Toyota does not want to put that many resources into having 4 key partner organizations. So right now, I think Toyota is not a possibility at the moment of being picked up. And then the final manufacturer is Honda. Now look, it has not been announced yet that Honda is coming to NASCAR. However, according to recent reports as early as this past week, and it was mentioned during basically the rain-delayed coverage of the Daytona 500, which of course is tomorrow, apparently Steve Phelps mentioned that talks are really heating up, and we heard it from Steve O'Donnell as well, that talks are heating up with manufacturers, and Honda has it mentioned as a very likely possibility of being a manufacturer that could join the NASCAR Cup Series. And Honda has been in the rumor mill for the last couple months. There's been issues with the hybrid situation over there, and that could certainly be something to massively watch out for in regards to them coming into play. And I think Honda could be looking at a team like Stewart Haas Racing perhaps as a potential option and possibility. Stewart Haas Racing, I think, definitely needs a new fresh start, and Honda would be that new fresh start. Would Tony Stewart be able to work with them really well, though? That certainly could be a possibility, and starting off as the first manufacturer for the new organization is possible. Now, obviously, there could be other teams that could come into play. Spire Motorsports could switch over there with their Andretti connection. Even if Chip Ganassi Racing was ever to come back to NASCAR, that certainly could also be a major option and possibility as well. But I look at Honda, like I said, as a really high chance of it coming to NASCAR as early as next year. They're obviously going to have 3 different groups, but I could definitely see, at least in their Cup program, switching over to Honda. Again, there's some drivers under contract with Ford like Chase Briscoe, so that could be an issue, but you look at Honda perhaps as a major possibility if they are to join the sport for Stewart Haas Racing to maybe switch over there. So that could be something to watch for as well. Now, let's say that they don't switch to manufacturers and they stay with Ford. But let's transition to talking about charters. If Stewart Haas Racing is not able to strike a deal with Ford being a key partner organization, we could see them sell their charters. There's a lot of conversation. We talked about it earlier in this episode, but there was a lot of talk and conversation last year that Stewart Haas Racing was in talks of at least selling 1 or 2 of their charters. And charters right now are going for a ton of money, around $40 to $50 million at the moment. And there are a lot of organizations that are wanting to expand. We know that 2311 Racing, they want to have 3 to 4 cars eventually, and right now there's no charters available. If Stewart Haas Racing was to sell their charter to a team like 2311 Racing, that could be a massive option there. You've got RFK Racing. They're going to IMSA potentially soon, but RFK Racing, they want to make that Stage 60 car potentially a full-time car for a development driver like a Haley Deegan perhaps, or maybe Frankie Muniz at some point. That could certainly be a possibility and option for Riley Herbst or Cole Custer. And then you think about Spire Motorsports. Spire Motorsports just expanded, but they could lose their charter if Zane Smith goes to Trackhouse. And speaking of Trackhouse Racing, they're in a dilemma coming into this year right now. They've got 4 drivers and only 2 rides available. And Daniel Suarez, even though he's set for 2025, he could be in a contract year this year. Ross Chastain isn't going anywhere with Trackhouse, but you've got Zane Smith driving a 71 car, which is technically a Trackhouse car, and you've got Shane Van Gisbergen. If he does extremely well this year, I don't care if Daniel Suarez does great, if SVG wins like 5 or 6 races this year, he could lose his seat and go over there and take the seat, and then Daniel Suarez loses his seat. So I could see Stewart Haas Racing selling one of their charters over to Trackhouse Racing this year. It's going to be interesting to see how things go with the charter market. So let's talk about it. How likely do I think Stewart Haas Racing stays with Ford? Are they going to switch manufacturers, and are they going to stay with Ford? To me, I think there's a 50-50 chance that they are going to stay with Ford. I think there's a chance they leave, especially with the fact that there's been no signing of a manufacturer at the moment with Stewart Haas Racing. But I also could see him stay with Ford and striking deal. And if Stewart Haas Racing performance really starts to pick up quite a bit, then maybe, just maybe, we see them dork a deal out where they do, in fact, end up staying with Ford. Right now, if you want my opinion, I think it's currently 50-50 if they stay with Ford or if they switch to manufacturer like Chevy. I think the most likely will be Chevrolet as a potential possibility for them to switch, but I think it's also a good chance that they are going to stay with Ford. So right now, currently at the moment, I'm going to say it's 50-50 whether or not Stewart Haas Racing will stay with Ford or if they're going to switch manufacturers to Chevy or even Honda. So, that is going to be it for today's special video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Link description below that, and comment below your thoughts below on today's episode. Do you think Stewart Haas Racing is going to switch manufacturers? Do you think they're going to stay with Ford? Or do you think they're going to switch to Chevy or Toyota? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we have a doubleheader dropping on the channel. We are going to have the Xfinity Series race review from Daytona, and then later that evening, we'll have the Daytona 500 race review, and then Tuesday, most likely, we're going to have a NASCAR news to discuss the news over the course of the last couple days. We've got a ton of great content dropping on the channel that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.